What's good? It's Wood. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love music like I do. Man, there are so many different angles you could take when looking at this whole Joe Budden situation. The one that came to mind with me with this latest fallout with him and his longtime co-host Rory and Mal on the Joe Budden Podcast is that people really shouldn't get it twisted on who Joe Budden was, and then linking the music career to the reality TV career on Love and Hip Hop New York versus his online and relationship drama, first with Tahiri for a long time, then with Sin Santana, to this podcast space, with Spotify and now with Patreon and Cash App. There's just always a lot going on with Joe Budden, and it's always steeped in some level of controversy. Now, with his rap career, and that's really what I want to emphasize here, because I feel like he has become a more iconic rap figure outside of his rap career than what he was delivering behind the mic. And I always looked at him as being like the underdog behind the mic. Now he's a major figure, one of the most relevant hip-hop voices in the game right now, which, I mean, it's really been incredible to see how that transformation has occurred. At least professional transformation. I can't speak of any personal transformation, but just in terms of the space that he occupies in the hip-hop realm. I think it was it might have been Mal who had said, once he had really started conquering the podcast game, that he was having conversations in the rap world with people who would not speak to him when he was just an MC. Now, Joe Budden, it's kind of weird. In a Wiz Khalifa-like way, and check out the parallel I'm talking about here. Not in terms of what their music sounded like, but when I first heard Wiz Khalifa, it was a song that was playing on the radio that was going like, and say yeah, to the Alice DJ Better Off Alone beat. And it was a nice pop rap track. But then he disappeared for some time because he had left the label that he was on, and then he reemerged through mixtapes, and then came back with, the Flight School mixtape with Currency, and then Flight School was his solo mixtape. It was How Fly with Currency, and then Burn After Rolling, and then the mixtape Kush and Orange Juice, which dropped right after the Deal or No Deal album before he got on with a major label. So Wiz Khalifa had to reemerge after having a little bit of pop rap success on the radio early in his career. Well, Joe Budden, was rapping and caught the attention of a guy who put a lot of people on, including Fabulous, DJ Clue, whose label Desert Storm was releasing these mixtapes like crazy and just putting a lot of people on, really. I mean, that was like him and then K-Slay. This was definitely that mixtape era. So Joe Budden started featuring on a lot of these, and so his rap profile started to grow, and before you know it, he signed to a major, and then he has a big single, Pump, Pump, Pump It Up. Music video was everywhere. The album, his debut album, Joe Budden, was released to a wide audience. It didn't kill it, but it had a popular single. It had another single with Busta Rhymes on it. So this was a proper major label debut. Well, it kind of came, too soon, too fast. Before you know it, he's having a lot of difficulties with Def Jam when he's trying to release his second album, which was called Growth, I believe. And it was supposed to come out 2004, 2005, because the debut came out in 2003. So he ends up parting ways with Def Jam. And so now he's, disappeared from the mainstream. And then he starts to drop these mood music mixtapes, which were fire. In fact, the second mood music was super critically acclaimed. People were talking about that like it was one of the best mixtapes of the era. And then he drops Mood Music 3, which you could argue might have even been better than Mood Music 2. And then he gets picked up by another label. Not a label as big as Def Jam. This was Amalgam. So it was more independent, or we'll say smaller label releases. But he then releases a version of Mood Music 3, but it was called Mood Music 3, the album. So they kind of re-released that mixtape, dressed it up a little different, a couple tracks on, a couple tracks off, and then re-release it as an album. And it didn't do well commercially. Really, Nothing that Joe Budden dropped after that point killed it commercially. But it was so critically acclaimed. And then he follows it up with Halfway House, which also gets great critical acclaim. And then he drops what I found to be his best album to date, which was Padded Room. If you listen to that today, so now we're talking 2009. So after he left the label, it would be another like 5 years before he would release an album. So 2003 was that Joe Budden debut, and then the Mood Music 3 re-release as the album was 2008. 5-year gap. So you can imagine. And you know, when he re-emerged, you know, much like Wiz Khalifa had to rebuild itself and truly establish his brand with the, you know, with the weed aesthetic, with the yeah bitch and the laugh, and then all of these different ad-libs that became synonymous with Wiz Khalifa around that Kush and Orange Juice time. Basically right up until the release of Rolling Papers, which featured Black and Yellow, you know, where after that song, the rest was history. Now, Wiz Khalifa is truly like a pop rap star. Before that, he was kind of like the people's champ. He was making really good mixtape after really good mixtape and was just a super interesting artist, the way that he was building his brand on Twitter. Well, Joe Budden was always building his brand online. Once he was dropped from the label, that's when he started airing out his relationship drama around the time of the Mood Musics, was very vocal about his different rap beefs. And so, yeah, 2009, he drops Padded Room, and then it's that year that he gets with Royce da 5'9", Joel Ortiz, Crooked Eye, and they form Slaughterhouse. And then they sign with Shady Records. Remember, Slim Shady, Eminem, and Royce da 5'9", longtime friends since like back in the day. You listen to early Eminem releases even before he was signed with Dre, and you'll hear Scary Movies with Eminem and Royce da 5'9". So now Joe Budden is a part of a supergroup signed to Shady Records, but the drama never seemed to like leave him. And by the way, if you look at Joe Budden's like earliest features, this is before his album or around the time that debut album back in 2003 came out, you would see that he was collaborating with Royce da 5'9", like super early in his career. Joe was kind of like a black sheep in the rap game. He was blackballed in a lot of ways, and it's not, you know, it's not through no fault of his own. He burned a lot of bridges too. But yeah, Joe Budden, it was only a certain few people that would, you know, work with Joe Budden over the years. You know what? Like, he was actually featured on a super early Kendrick Lamar mixtape. So this was like maybe 2006. No, wait a second. No, this would be like 2003. So think about that. Joe Budden collaborated with Kendrick Lamar in Freeway from State Property. Rockefeller was also on the track. It was from like Kendrick Lamar's, one of those Hub City Threat. I think it was like Minor of the Year mixtape. So this is like way early. This is like 7 years before Kendrick Lamar dropped Section 80, before he dropped Good Kid, Mad City. Yeah, Joe Budden's been around for a minute. He was collaborating, you know, with Christina Milian, like in 2004. You know, he was still a little, you know, jiggy around the time of 2005, collaborating with Marcus Houston. So Joe Budden was getting it in, but it just transitioned from, hey, I've got pop rap career aspirations, to let's get it from the ground up and build this in a more underground rapper type of way. And you could also hear, you know, when he released the album, the first album, he was doing all the things that all the popular rappers, the Cam'rons, the Rockefeller style rappers, and, you know, different East Coast rappers, where it was more about like, you know, flossing. There was a lot of flossing during this, you know, throwback era with Fabulous and all that. You were rapping like you were iller than the next dude. You had more money than the next guy. You would, you know, rob him if you wanted to. You would steal his chick. You just have to jump on everybody. You are just unfadable, right? That was kind of like the persona, the rap character that a lot of the MCs were portraying. Well, when Joe Budden started to reemerge, he was actually spearheading a movement that we see today, which is kind of the emo rapper. I mean, there were underground rappers like Slug of Atmosphere, you know, before that, and, you know, several others, but for a mainstream name to start doing this, you know, Joe Budden was like one of the guys who was kind of showing a different vulnerability in his lyrics that your more, you know, braggadocious rappers wouldn't think to do, because they've always got to be like, no, I'm kind of perfect, you know what I'm saying, like in their raps. And when they do self-degrade or self-deprecate, it's in a way like, yeah, I'm just murking too many people, or I'm just like too heartless, doing too many people cold. They're never victimizing themselves, like, unless they're talking about like childhood and like, you know, a family situation. But by and large, rappers aren't taking too many L's in their lyrics, right? At least that type of rapper. But the Joe Budden type rapper was the one who wasn't like too proud to admit his L's in life, whether it was in relationships or, you know, in friendships, talking about friendships and how this dude did me dirty. Like, listen to the opening track of Mood Music 3, the album, called Dear Diary. Like, you weren't getting that type of lyricism from the popular rappers of the day. So yeah, Joe Budden doesn't, in my opinion, get enough credit for like all of the, not only ultra lyricism, which is why he would be recruited into a group like Slaughterhouse, you know, where it's nothing but those A1 top-notch upper division MCs, but to be the one who's kind of telling a story through your raps and like just showing like, no, it's not all good. It ain't all perfect. I'm not even all right in the head. He was actually one of those early mental health type of rappers where you start talking about, you know, the paranoia, even a little schizophrenia, drug addiction. Like Joe Budden was, you know, addicted on some heavy stuff. It wasn't just weed with him, and it wasn't like, you know, nothing but pills like a lot of, you know, today's era's rappers have fallen prey to. But we're talking like angel dust when he returned to New Jersey after spending some time out in North Carolina. So Joe Budden is a very complicated figure, and so it's no surprise when you hear these like he's having a falling out, mixing business with personal, and just like, you know, rough around the edges, not showing the same behavioral consistency where you're acting in a solid way on this day, and showing patterns of reliability, any sort of predictability in any capacity, professional life, personal life. It's always been a mixed bag and a very, really, I mean, it's been messy. It's been messy in so many different realms. I mean, this is the guy who, you know, was spearheading the podcast game before he was in the podcast game. Just doing stuff on, like, Vimeo, YouTube. When, like, him and Slaughterhouse were doing Rock the Bells, he gets jumped by Raekwon of the Wu-Tang Clan's, like, entourage backstage, you know, and he's got an ice pack over his eye talking about the incident just moments after it happened. So he's never been too proud to be forthcoming and honest and vulnerable, but it just cuts a lot of different ways when you start ascending the business ranks, and now you are a Spotify-worthy podcaster who now has to run a business. It's just a handful, and you know, and I hope that he at least partners with people who could do the things that he's not, at least at this point, equipped to burden, at least not by himself, and he has enough team members that he treats well and with dignity and respect to where he's able to enterprise in the way that he, you know, aspires to. So I just want to, like, you know, say that about his rap career, tie it into the podcast career, and really encourage everybody to listen to Padded Room, the album. Listen to Mood Music's 2 and 3, and you'll have a totally different respect of Joe Budden's artistry. Because I feel like a lot of people, you know, they look at him as a failed rapper, right? Because they remember pump it up, and then he, you know, to a lot of people he disappeared. Kind of like Cannabis after his early label album, you know, that first album, Can I Bust? I think that was the first when he was signed with Universal and working with Wyclef, and then blame Wyclef for the mishaps of his first album. The second album didn't do too much better, but I liked it. I really liked the 2000 BC, before Can I Bust. I didn't like See True Hollywood Stories. I did like Mike Club, The Curriculum, and Rip the Jacker. But the thing is, like, he fell off of 80% of the people's radars that picked up on him when he first entered the game, because he was like the #1 prospect, even when there were other great emerging artists. We had like the Locks were coming out, DMX was coming out, Big Pun was coming out. At the time, Cannabis was the #1 guy that people were looking at like, damn, this might be the future of rap. And so just think about that. But then he just fell more and more into obscurity, even if the hip-hop purists and the underground heads were still paying attention to him. So Joe Budden, again, I don't think he reestablished himself as well with the underground crowd as Cannabis did, at least with those couple of albums, My Club and Rip the Jacker. But, you know, Joe Budden continued to release, or, you know, was releasing very good music between, you know, the time that he left the label, you know, when he started doing the mood music, so 2006, 2007, 8, Padded Room 2009, through 2012, where he did like Loose Quarter, No Love Lost, Some Love Lost, All Love Lost, and then he eventually retired like in 2018 or something like that. But yeah, very good music, very underrated artist, very deep cat, man. Like, most MCs cannot deliver lyrically the way that Joe Budden delivered in his music. So again, Mood Music's 2, 3, and Padded Room. Give those a listen, and you can see why he was so highly touted in the first place. It's just hard when you come into the game super commercially with a pump it up, and then try to get people to then take you more seriously on a deeper level after that. It's a tough transition to make. We've seen people try to do that. But yeah, let me know what you think about this whole Joe Budden fallout, about, you know, the future of the Joe Budden podcast. And, you know, I hope that they iron it out, because I think that there was a lot of chemistry there between Joe Budden and Rory and Mal. It's hard to see that come back together, especially because of how hurt and just off-put Mal was based on Joe's behavior. And you could listen to Mal and Rory give their take, and I think that just based on what I heard, it sounds like Rory would be more open to a future in working with Joe, whereas Mal sounds like, nah, man, I don't see this ever happen. I'm done. But yeah, unfortunate fallout. I get that it's great for clickbait. It generates tons of stories. I mean, shoot, it motivated me to make this video. But yeah, don't sleep on Joe Budden's rap career. He is more than just a failed rapper. Yes, that early major label music industry promise fizzled out pretty quickly, but he did reemerge to make some pretty dope stuff. So yeah, give that a listen. Please leave your comments in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into music like I am. I'm Wood. Thanks for tuning in.